Okay.
All righty, and I will share my screen. And present. All right, hope everybody can see that. And I just want to say thank you to Kay and Shammy for setting this up. This is really super fun, and the Crazy Plant Addict group has been a lot of fun. And so I hope everybody has been enjoying sharing their plants with everybody else. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about seed starting, and it's a perfect day to do this. And the time is here, and early March is a really good time to be talking. Hang on one second. Sorry.
We have a question, Hannah.
Oh, good.
From a Mary Jane.
Oh, huh.
When can we transplant our seeds into the ground?
It depends. It depends on what zone you're in. And there are several seasons of spring, and this is fool spring that we're in right now. So don't be fooled. We still have a little ways to go yet, and it also depends on exactly what type of plant that you want to put in the ground. So in another couple of weeks, you'll be able to put some of your cold loving plants in the ground, like some of your brassicas, beets and Swiss chard and spinach and lettuce and things like that. But you've got quite a ways to go in having to wait to plant some of your heat loving vegetables like tomatoes and eggplant and squash. Those need to wait till early June. Okay, so let's get into this. So before I do anything and before I work with any group of people to do something to work on a project, I always want to make sure that everyone has asked themselves, why? Why do we want to do this? And I normally, this would be a big sort of Q&A part of a presentation, but with being online and Zoom, it's a little bit difficult to do that. So I'm going to share with you a few reasons why I love to start seeds, besides the fact that it's a compulsion because I love plants so much. There are a lot of really important reasons for me for why I like to start seeds. And part of that is because I collect seeds. I save seeds. I've saved seeds for decades. My mother saved seeds and introduced me to the idea of heirloom seeds and heirloom plants a long, long time ago. And so if you're saving these seeds, they're these living organisms, and you need to plant them and help cultivate them throughout their life cycle so that you can get fresh seed from them. And every seed has a story. So this little flat of seedlings in front of you doesn't look like much. These are calendula seedlings, and a student of mine who is from Romania gave these seeds to me, and these seeds came from his grandmother's garden. And he would go to see his grandmother every 3 or 4 years and spend a few weeks with her during the summer. And the last time he was able to see her, he felt very guilty, but he stole some seeds from her garden, and he just wanted to take home part of her garden. He lives in Las Vegas, Nevada. And he just wanted to have these seeds that his grandmother saved and grew every year. So he has dill and calendula and all these things. Well, his grandmother passed away, and he has never been able to go back. And all he had were these seeds. And I started working with him as a student probably 5 or 6 years after that, and he had never planted these seeds. And so he sent them to me, hoping that I could get them to grow and germinate and to get fresh seed from them. And he didn't have many seeds at all. He just had a small pinch. And of that pinch of seeds, this is all I got to germinate. And I was able to grow these out. Actually, a few more did germinate a little bit later in the season, and I was able to grow these out, and they bloomed, and I got fresh seed off of them. So every seed has a story. Every seed that you hold in your hand came from somewhere, and it came from generations of people tending to the life cycle of that plant. And it's a really amazing thing to honor by planting those seeds. Starting seeds also gives you the chance to increase the diversity of the plants that you grow. If you rely on a garden center and you just go to pick out the 1 or 2 varieties that they have deemed best to grow and sell to you, you're really limiting your choice. If you look through seed catalogs, you'll see there's a huge amount of diversity. You walk through our grocery stores and there's no diversity, there's no choice. But if you buy interesting and different seeds, you have control and you have the power to grow a far more interesting array of vegetables. This right here is 8 different varieties of onions. And I typically grow anywhere between 15 and 30 different varieties of onions a year. So there's a lot out there. And okay, I should send you the link, but I recently compiled a list of over 75 seed companies that I have ordered from in the past 5 years. So people might be interested in reading that. So along the same lines of diversity, you have choice. And in Massachusetts, we have a very rich cultural and ethnic populations. And when you go to the grocery store and you try to find a pepper that might be the pepper from your home country, it's pretty hard to find. And so you have to choose from what a grocery store or farmer's market has to offer. But if you grow it yourself, you have a lot more control over that choice. And diversity is really beautiful. These are all different radishes, and they're just lovely to look at, all the amazing diversity in the plant world. And there are other reasons why we start seeds. Is we live in the Northeast. Actually, with this plant group, I'm seeing people that join from Arizona and all over the country now. So I'm not really sure if we're all from the Northeast, but if you are from an area that experiences a deep winter, starting seeds is just a really hopeful thing to do when it's still cold out. And while we're sleeping away, our seeds we know that it is going to be warm enough to be able to plant those seeds out in just a few weeks. So aside from hope, why do we start seeds? Well, because winter. So we live in a climate where we can't grow food outdoors year round. And we live in a climate where our growing season is actually quite short. So in New England, if we have 120, 130 days that are frost free, that's a good season for us. And to be quite honest, if we start seeds earlier, we get a jump on that season and we are able to extend that season, and it allows us to grow many more types of plants, and we can get an earlier harvest and a more prolonged harvest if we start them ahead of time. So hang on one second.
don't have to hurry, hon. We're here to enjoy you, not that we don't.
Thank you. Okay, so, all right. So that's why I start seeds. And I would love for you to ask yourself why you want to start seeds. And if you want to share some of your thoughts in the chat, please feel free to type something in and share with each other and start a little side conversation. But it's always nice to know why we're doing something. Okay, so seed starting requires having seeds that are actually going to germinate and grow for you. And I like to explain this to people.
Can I
Yeah.
interrupt for a second? We have another question from Ann Littlefield. It says,
Great.
what do you mean by germ testing?
Oh, I will explain that. So germ testing is germination testing. And germination is when a seed comes out of dormancy, it wakes up and it begins to grow out of that seed coat into a new plant. And we want to make sure that our seed is alive and is healthy enough in order to grow. So I want to back up just a little bit and talk about what a seed actually is. So a seed is a very complex, very miraculous structure. And it is an evolutionary advance of plants that allowed plants to actually colonize the planet. In the early plant groups, when plants started from organisms that really lived in streams and ponds and the ocean. And as evolution created plants that were able to live in air and not just in water, the earliest land plants, such as mosses and ferns, were restricted to wetland areas because they needed water in order to reproduce. And as plants evolved, they evolved these structures in which they could produce seeds. And seeds are structures that allow a whole plant to be dormant for a very long time. There are plants, we have taken barley out of Egyptian tombs and gotten it to grow. So thousands of years later. So the development of a plant's ability to produce seeds has allowed plants to live in other parts of the world that are not necessarily wet. Desert plants, even just on the side of a mountain, things like that. And so how does it do that? So first of all, inside of that seed, I said it's a dormant plant, and it is. There is an embryonic plant inside that seed. So if you look at your left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a cross-section of a seed under a microscope. And that funny little structure in the middle that looks like it has a little tail and the little bunny ears, that's the dormant embryonic plant. So in the little pointy part at the bottom is the baby root, and the little ears are the two, if you ever watch a seed germinate, and those two little leaves that fold out of the soil as the seed comes out of the soil, those are the nascent cotyledons, those nascent seed leaves. And it's surrounded by a nutrition source that little tiny embryo can feed off of as it's germinating. So we know that plants produce their own energy in sunlight when they're photosynthesizing, but when a seed is buried in the soil, it's not photosynthesizing and it needs energy. And surrounding that is this seed coat. And the seed coats are tough. They keep that seed dry. Sometimes they have chemical inhibitors that keep that embryo asleep from just a chemical influence. And those three components together create that seed. And I make this point because how many people think that every year you have to buy brand new fresh seeds?
Not me.
So you're ahead of the game. A lot of people, when I talk about this, are shocked. And, I know people that have seeds that have the year 2018 on the seed packet. I was talking to a woman the other day and she's like, oh, I was going through my seeds and, I threw out all the 2018 ones. And I was like, what? I was like, they are probably still fine. If you store seeds properly, if you store them as dry as you can get them, dry is the number one point. And as cold as possible. And seeds don't need to be frozen, but if you can get them and then try to keep them as cool as possible, they can store for a very long time. Seeds such as onion and parsnips tend to have a very soft seed coat, and so they usually only live for 2 or 3 years. But other seeds, brassica seeds, tomato seeds, pepper seeds, they can live 5, 10, 15 years, no problem, if you've stored them properly. So if you're like me and you hoard seeds, it doesn't mean I don't buy seeds every year, because I do. And then I just add them to the collection. And so you want to make sure, though, that those seeds are going to grow. So you want to test them. And I usually take just a small pinch of seeds from the seed packet. I put it on some moist towels and slip it into a Ziploc bag or something. And I just see if those seeds germinate. And if I put 10 seeds in the Ziploc bag and 4 of them germinate, then I know that I have a germination rate of 40%. So if any of you have looked at your seed packets, you've probably seen that many seed companies will tell you what the germination rate. They usually don't sell seeds that have a germination rate of less than 90%. But if you have seeds and they have 40% germination, you know that for every 10 seeds you start, you're going to get 4 plants. So that's a good thing. And it's a good thing to know. So you can use those seeds.
Hannah?
Can I ask you a question,
Yes.
please?
Yeah.
Why is it that when you get some plants, I used to stop my own seeds, but some seeds used to come out like they're supposed to be round in the center, as you know. Excuse me, I'm hoarse. Anyway, some of them are, instead of being round, they're completely flat in the center.
I think he's talking about like cucumber seeds. That happens a lot when we dry them.
Right. You got it, Catherine. Got it. All right.
Yeah. So if you're saving seeds yourself.
Almost ready, honey.
Yeah. If you're saving seeds yourself from plants that.
So it's almost ready.
If you're saving seeds yourself from plants that you've grown, sometimes you don't get full pollination of the fruit. And so not all of that seed is going to be viable. And that can be a problem. So Kay, we could actually do a whole lecture on seed saving where I talk about all these things. And we could do that later in the summer if you'd like. That's a fun one to talk
That would
about.
be fantastic. Thank you very much.
I've got a new agent.
I did want to ask my own question also, Hannah. Oh my God, now I forgot what it was. Oh yes. Now I read before that if they float, then if you put the seeds in a bowl of cold water, if they float, then they're not viable. Is that really true?
It's mostly true. It depends on the type of seed. And I think for something like squash or cucumbers, I think it's a pretty good indication. But the thing you have to worry about is that on some of those seeds, they actually have a coating around the seed that would cause them to float. And so if that coating is still on there, it might cause them to float, even though they're still viable. And that's a you just do a simple soak on the seeds and wash them to get that coating off of it. So you have to be kind of careful. Usually the weight of the seed, for big seeds, you can tell like if it's like a thin, flimsy, seed or not. But yeah, so that's mostly true, but not always true. Yeah. Okay, what is this picture about? This is just, I was very proud of how many onion seeds I was starting. So these are all seed packets for different types of onion seeds. And by saving your seeds year to year, it allows you to add to your seed collection. So that increases the diversity of seeds and choice that you have in your own seed library.
Can I ask you a question again?
Sure.
Okay, concerning your onions, why is it that they recommend some onion, the stem that come up, they recommend some onions to wait till they dry, the green on the top, wait till they dry and turn brown. But these here they're not brown, they're completely green. They were picked when they were green. The stems, there, right there. Okay, see how they're green?
Yeah, so what I do with onions for harvesting them, you want to wait till the stems flop over.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Right, but you can pull them at that time and move them to a nice dry spot to cure them and then let those leaves dry down. You don't want to cut the leaves off before they're nice and dry. But you can harvest the plants while those leaves are still green. As long as that stem has flopped over, that onion is done growing.
Okay.
And then once you take it, put it somewhere nice and dry, everything dries out, and the leaves are nice and dry, then you can clip them off and then they're ready to store for the winter.
The reason I was asking, because I saw a video about it, and there was this gentleman. Well, I was way down the south, to be honest with you, had these big son of a guns. And they always waited till the thing was completely flat and brown. They wouldn't pull it until that. Then after everything was flat and brown, they pull it. Then they bit right on it like there was an apple. Little boy.
Some onions you can do that with. That's called field curing. So you can do that too. You can let them cure in the field. Okay, so we covered seed storage. You just want to make sure that those seeds are dry. And this is just an example of some germination testing that I did. These are cucumber seeds. And you can see that for the most part, there was good germination. There may be 2 or 3 seeds that didn't germinate, but this seed lot looks just fine. And I would have no problem planting that out. Plus, cucumber seedlings are really cool looking. They look like little dragons. So, okay, so, all right, let's get into some of the supplies. So seed starting does not need to be glamorous. I have worked as a professional grower at botanic gardens and at garden companies for a long time. And I have worked with a lot of really good equipment, and I am a home gardener and a home seed starter, and I use all sorts of things. So I'm going to just show you some examples of all different types of things that you can use to start seeds. So this is a picture from one of the greenhouses that I used to manage. We used to grow 20 to 25,000 seedlings a year that would go out into our 36-acre garden site. So we had a pretty heavy duty production schedule, and we really focused on making sure that the plants were all healthy. We use a lot, these trays, these are standard nursery type trays, and most agways sell these now, and you can get these in kits at Home Depot or Ocean State Job Lot. And we would save these from year to year and clean them and reuse them. And they work really, really well to start lots of seeds in. So this tray here that you see holds, has 72 cells in it. So it can hold 72 plants. And notice how there is one seed, one plant per cell. We'll get into why that is important later, but I just want to point that out. So this is about as fancy of a seed starting tray as you might deal with. We would start our seeds in trays like this, and then we would pot them up into larger pots, such as these 3.5-inch pots that you see once they reach a certain stage. And that's really good for a plant. That up potting in the seedling stage actually stimulates growth. As long as you're gentle with it and you don't hurt the root system, up potting it, putting it in fresh soil, giving that soil some fertilizer, really does a lot to help plants grow really strong, and they get stronger stems when you handle them like that as seedlings. Some other seed starting supplies that I always like to have on hand are my Sharpies. Don't leave home without it. These gold and silver Sharpies are pretty awesome because, as you can see in that lower picture, you can actually write right on those black trays. And I often make a diagram in my seed starting notebook. And, I'll have like column A, B, C, D, and along the other edge of the tray, I'll say row 1, 2, 3, 4. And so then I can say, row 1, A through F is celery, so you can keep your notes that way. Tweezers. Those are very important for handling seeds and also handling seedlings. Tags, like to use little nursery tags. I bought these today. My nice score of popsicle sticks. This was $2.50 for 150. And I like the wooden ones because they break down and I can put them in my compost pile. You might wonder why I have a glue stick, and that is a repositionable glue stick. And so when I open my seed packets, I can actually help glue the little lip back down. And if you use the repositionable glue, then you get yourself a fancy seed packet that you can open and close, and it sticks, but you can reopen it. And we'll get into the other picture later. Okay, so seed starting. Other materials that are really important to consider is what we call media. What are you going to put those seeds into? I really like to use a really high quality seed starting mix. And they're usually sterilized, and so you don't risk introducing diseases to your young seedlings that might possibly attack the root system of the germinating. People ask, well, why don't I just go out in my yard and dig up some soil and use that in my pots for starting seeds? And when you're starting seeds indoors, it's a very controlled environment. And that's one of the reasons why you start seeds indoors, is because you can control that environment. And seeds love to grow outside. That's where they evolved and that's where they belong. But if you're trying to start seeds indoors, you're trying to start a certain amount of seeds that you can rely on to plan out and put in your garden. And so using garden soil for seed starting, there's a lot of fungal diseases in there that could actually just kill those young seedlings. I also love these little coir blocks. This is the new Jiffy pot, in my opinion. When I was little, we used to use Jiffy pots, and they had that awful like plastic mesh around them, but very fascinating to watch, like, you know, absorb the water. And these little coir blocks are great. I got these at Ocean State Job Lot. They were $2.60 for 50 of them, and it went up to $3 this year. Everything's out of control with seed starting prices this year, but you can actually buy blocks of coir and you can use that in your little trays.
Can I ask you a question, please, again? Sorry about
Sure.
that.
Go for it, Joey.
Okay, when you plant in the seeds, see, I used to grow my own, like I said.
Mhm.
I always used to put 2 or 3 seeds there, and then I'd water the top. And then I always kept on watering the top. I always wondered, since you have that in the container, would you be better off putting water in the container and leave it be, or what?
That's a great question. So the reason why I have this picture of these little coir discs in the water is because you have to soak them first in order for them to expand and hydrate before you can put the seed in them. When I water seedlings, so if you water from the top, I'm sure you were watering fairly gently.
Yes, to start off. But
Yeah.
I'm talking about after the,
Yep.
excuse me, I'm dying thing. Anyways, after it, you water a lot, is it proper to water? Geez,
I know what you're trying to say. So it is actually better to help strengthen the seedlings to water from the top once they're up and established, and they don't have to be up far. So when I'm first starting the seeds and before they've germinated, I prefer to water from the bottom, because if you aren't gentle, and Joey, you are gentle, I know you are, because you just said you were, but if you aren't gentle and you water from the top, what happens is, you have like you have your soil here and your seed, and if you water from the top too hard, the seed just sort of tumbles around. Sometimes it'll jump out and it'll go in its neighbor's pot, or it'll be driven down too deeply. So I water from the bottom until they've germinated and they're up and they have their 2 little leaves, or 1 leaf if it's a monocot. And then I will start gently watering from the top, because that helps strengthen them. And we're going to talk about tough love and strengthening seedlings in a little bit too.
Sure.
Hannah, we do have another question from Mary
Yeah.
Jane Traggis.
Yeah.
Wanted to know how to spell the coir block.
COIR.
COIR. Thank you.
Good question. So you'll see different grades: fine, medium, coarse, and if I'm starting seeds, I generally want to start them in a fine grit media. And you don't have to. If you have potting soil left over from last year, or you're experiencing the rush on supplies that we are all experiencing right now at any of our stores where we're buying things, you might just have to buy whatever you can get. And if you're using a coarse grain potting soil, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. But if you can get the fine grain seed starting mix, that makes a nice soft little seed bed for that little baby root to first germinating to grow down into and take a hold of. So I prefer to use a fine grain. You don't have to. If you only have a coarse grain and you want to use a fine grain, you can just sift it. You don't have to use this fancy soil sifter. You can use a pasta sifter. Just make sure you clean it real good before you have dinner. And so, all right. So these are some of those trays. And the 2 most common sizes, and I'm going to cover other types of trays that you can use, and there is no end of trays. Kay, I've been really enjoying watching you guys starting your seeds in solo cups. You know, I mean, it's perfect, right? If it holds soil and you can put some holes in the bottom, you can start a seed in it. So the trays on the left are trays that have 72 cells, and the trays on the right have 128 cells. So you can really start a lot of seeds in a small amount of space there. And though the 128 size, I would use that. I would probably mix some really nice compost in with my seed starting mix, fill that tray, and seed in my beets and my spinach and my Swiss chard. And in 4 weeks, those are ready to go out in the garden directly from that tray. And you've got yourself 128 nice little transplants. And you can do the same with the 72. So you can start a lot of plants in a small space. But there are a lot of other trays and supplies that you can start seeds in. So these, I just went to Ocean State Job Lot and kind of bought one of everything just to show you guys what they have. They all different shapes and sizes depending on what you have room for in your house. And, you know, they have like that seed starter, the one on the top. It's pretty good for a windowsill. My windowsills aren't quite wide enough for it. It would fall off, but you could get creative and prop it up somehow. And then in the lower right, these are just trays that I got from Ocean State Job Lot that cost like 25 cents. They hold water and they'll hold soil. They'll hold your little coir blocks. They'll hold those the little black cells up here. You could subdivide these and put them in there. So there's no end of different combinations of things that hold soil and things that hold the things that hold soil. And having that tray underneath them is important. And I'll show you a couple more pictures. So this was from this morning, and I brought my seeds outside to take them for a walk because I like walking around my house and my yard with my seeds. It's the endless parade of seedling trays, but we had temperatures over 40 degrees today. Nice, bright, sunny day, and it was windy. And it was a perfect day to introduce these seedlings to their first taste of sunlight and their first taste of wind. And a lot of people wait before hardening off their seedlings until they're almost ready to plant them. And all of a sudden they have a seedling that's been indoors for 6 or 7 weeks, and they put it outside and they wonder why all the leaves burn off of it and it flops over and breaks. And so these guys got a really good taste of how to toughen up a little bit.
I ask you a question, Dan.
Yeah, sure.
Why is it that I've tried growing things inside and they come out good, but then I tried the same seed on the outside, but then they start to emerge or grow just as fast as the one that I planted inside. How much roll that? I went, oh, great. Here I am going ahead of things, but you put the seed outside when the grounds get nice and warm and so forth. You put it in about a quarter of an inch in the ground, then cover it, wet it, so forth. And within so many days, the darn thing comes up. But here you have a seed in the house that's already come up, but that thing there is going like a bat out of. And
yeah, so I really only start seeds that I really need to ahead of time. There are plenty, like, so I will start my first sowing of beets indoors. I'll start my first spinach indoors, or I'll start my first cabbages indoors. And because then I can plant them outside at the end of March or early April. And they'll be fine. And at that time, I could probably have to wait another week or two before the soil warms up and I can plant seeds. But if it's later in the season and I know that I can just get out and plant the seeds in the ground, then I would wait and do that, because transplanting them shocks them, right? So you're gonna slow that seedling down a little bit when you transplant it. So yeah, there's a trade-off. And as you get to know your crops and your soil, you'll know which ones you really need to start ahead of time and which ones you don't.
Well, you take, for instance, like tomatoes, like you can buy it, what they call seedlings, geez. And you buy the seedlings, you put them in the ground, but you've already got them up about that high, most of them. But you put regular seeds in the ground, like 2 or 3 of them in one pot in the soil, and they'll come up right up quick, and they'll go like a bat out of heck.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was just wondering if it's really worth starting in the house, where starting the seeds in the house for tomatoes.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. You'll get a much earlier harvest, and not all varieties. There are some varieties that you'll see those seeds grow real well, but if you start them indoors and you treat them right, then it is worth starting them ahead. So I'm going to try to get through the next few slides pretty quickly, and then we'll get into the next section. So this is just an example of all different types, different sizes of seed starting trays that you can use. So planning, I can't stress this enough. Starting seeds, you put them in the pot. That's the easy part. But planning how many. So you want to take into consideration the size of your garden. I keep pretty extensive notebooks on the seeds that I start, the space that I have, how many that I need, and the planning pays off. When you're planning, you want to take into account the size of that plant when it is mature. You also want to ask yourself how many successions of planting you're going to have, and if you need to start seeds for that, or if you're going to start them by direct sowing in the garden. So every good seed company out there has planting guides. They will tell you how many days that it will take for that plant to mature from transplanting. They will tell you how far apart you should place these plants when you plant them in the ground. And that is taking into consideration how big that plant is going to be when it's mature. And I can't stress the importance of paying attention to that, because there's nothing worse than growing too many seeds, starting too many seedlings, and getting out to your garden and you've got all these seedlings that you've grown and you don't actually have room for them. But because you grew them and you're connected to them and you're invested in them and they're your babies, you're still going to try to plant them in the ground, even if you don't have room. And so you'll end up planting them too close together and they won't grow the way they really should. Their roots won't be able to get the water and the nutrients that the top really needs. They'll be too crowded, and so they'll be more susceptible to disease because they won't be able to get a lot of airflow around the plants. And so it's really heartbreaking to get out to your garden and have too many plants, because the choice is compost the additional ones or plant them all too close. And most of us are going to try to plant them all too close. And I know us, I know me, I know you, I know how that goes. So plan your garden.
That's what I did. My garden was 100 by 70 when I could at one time.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a big garden.
I had it with another guy, but those days are gone by.
Well, we all, Kay, you've got a nice big garden, I know. So one spot to get information about the particular variety. So not all, you could take cabbages and you could be growing green cabbages, but you could have 30 different varieties of green cabbage. Some of those green cabbages mature early. Some of those green cabbages are small. Some of those green cabbages are long season and get really big. And they require different spacing in the garden, and that also helps you plan. So if you want to be able to plant rutabagas in the same spot where you have your cabbage, you're probably going to want to plant an early season cabbage. They're going to be a little bit smaller, but they're smaller plants. They mature faster. You'll be able to harvest that cabbage, get that plant out of your garden by late June, and you can get your rutabagas seeded in early July. If you make the mistake and you plant a long season cabbage and you had really been hoping to plant an additional fall crop in that space, you won't be able to. So knowing that plant and knowing the variety and helps you plan. And so looking at the seed packet, looking at the website, looking at the seed catalog will help you figure out all of that information. So on the back of the bok choy, if you look on the left-hand side of the packets, the right-hand picture, you'll see at the very top, days to harvest, 45 days. And that tells you that in, a month and a half, you will be able to plant another crop in the same part of the garden where this crop is going to be growing. And that helps you plan for the whole season, which is really good.
I have a question. Hey, Hannah, can I ask you a quick question? Hannah, sorry.
Sure.
When it comes to the vegetable spacing, I've read a lot of things where they say the spacing is supposed to be 6 inches. It's actually, when you go to plant it, you can measure and have it only be 3 inches from top to top, because you're only looking for 6 inches total around the vegetable. Is that true?
That's called on center. So 6 inches on center is from the stem of one plant to the stem of the other plant. That's what that spacing refers to. And if you're planting seeds, it's where each seed goes. You want 6 inches between where that seed goes. If you're transplanting seedlings, it's 6 inches between where the little root system of seedling 1 and seedling 2 goes. 6 inches, 8 inches, 12 inches, 20, whatever that is. So it's really from the center of that plant, and that allows the canopy of that plant. That's telling you that's probably like a lettuce that just has like a small 6-inch diameter canopy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Oh. Okay, these are just all different examples of some of the seed starting guides that seed companies have. All right, so when do you start planting your seeds? Well, you want to know, I can't stress this enough, you want to know how big So there are some real general guidelines that have been, known by farmers for centuries. If you're growing a brassica crop, so brassicas are your broccolis, your cabbages, your Brussels sprouts, those are your brassicas. You don't want to keep a brassica seedling in a pot any more than 6 weeks. Any longer than that, they really start to get stressed out. And you'll see that they'll start to like turn red, stems will start to look weird. And so each crop type has this sort of maximum amount of time that you want to keep it captive in that seedling phase. So for tomatoes, for instance, that really only needs to be a 7, maybe an 8-week-old seedling. And so if we're in the Northeast, so your planting date for tomatoes and peppers and eggplants is like June 1st. It's not Memorial Day. It's June 1st. You can probably plant them out on Memorial Day and they won't die, but the night is still pretty cold. You really want to wait. I don't plant any of that stuff out until the first week in June. I wait. And so I count back from that. I know that's my planting date and I count back 7 weeks. And that's when I start my seeds for those. For peppers and eggplants, you want those, they're a little bit slower growing. So you want to give those maybe 8 weeks, maybe 9 weeks at tops in your seedling phase. And like I said, your brassicas. Now, brassicas are something that you're going to plant out in your garden before your last frost date. They're nice, cold, hardy plants. You want to get those in the garden in probably early May. I run a small farm and we're going to be doing our first in-ground planting of brassicas probably in mid-April. And I want 6-week-old seedlings. So I've already gone ahead and started, here's one of my nice trays here. So these are all my little baby cabbages coming along. Those are parsleys on the end that haven't germinated yet, or celery, sorry. So you want to know how long that seedling can really languish in captivity before you free it into your garden. So first you want to know that, and then you want to know, well, when is really the right time to start that seed? And so humans have been cultivating plants for 15 to 20,000 years. And they have been planting by moon phases for most of that time. So now we're in the 22nd century, and we know better. We have all of our technology, and humans are separate from nature, and we don't really need to pay attention to that. So people just sort of start seeds whenever they want to, but you can still plant by the moon phases. And the Old Farmer's Almanac is alive and well. They have a great website. They have great educational resources, and they still have their planting calendars. You can go online, you put in your zip code, and you can sort by planting date, and you get this really neat table. And what's interesting is I put in information for a couple of different locations in Massachusetts. So this is for Wareham, Buzzards Bay area, and look at the planting dates for starting seeds for thyme and rosemary. We're looking at my average last frost is April 30th. And for starting thyme indoors, February 18th. I put in another zip code for another part of Massachusetts. This is north central Massachusetts, only about 80 miles away. Last frost date is May 26th. And look at these starting dates. So you really want to pay attention to that and use some of those guides. Starting seeds indoors, it's a big endeavor. And if you do start those seedlings too early, one of the biggest questions I get is, why are my seedlings so leggy? Like, why are they leggy? Why are they weak? Why are they flopping over? And a lot of that is because they're in that seedling phase for too long. They're competing with each other for light, so they're stretching instead of growing nice and stout. So pay attention to your planting dates. This is a little bit complicated and we have a lot of information to cover tonight. So planting by the biodynamic calendar, they use the moon and constellations, and they have their own calendar. I'm gonna just move past this part, but if anyone is interested in this, I will make sure that Kay has my email or just post something on the Crazy Addicted Plant Addicts group, and I can answer the question there. Trying to make a plug. Okay, so I love to ask people, if you've started seeds indoors, do you think that you were successful? And I hear a lot of people tell me, I start seeds and everything just goes wrong. I just don't have any success starting seeds. And I said, well, did they come up? Well, yes, they came up, but okay, so you had plenty of success starting the seeds. It's really what you do with those seeds between starting them and planting them out that's really important. So starting seeds is the easy part, and I like to go in and explain a little bit about how we really want to care for those seeds so that they're nice, strong, vigorous seedlings. So I will start with the very basics of starting the seeds. Get your soil into your trays. This is very basic. On the right-hand side, you will see a close-up of my seedling tray. Once I fill it with soil, I actually push that soil down in the tray to compact it a little bit, and also so that the soil level isn't even with the tray. So I'll compact that down a little bit. So on the left-hand side, you can see that's just how it was filled. And on the right-hand side, I've packed it down with my fingers. On the left-hand side, you can see I put my seeds in. I used bean seeds for this picture so that it would be easy for you to see. But this seed tray is actually too small for bean seeds. If I was actually starting bean seeds for real, I would use a larger cell size. But this was just really nice and easy to see. So you put that seed down in there, and then again on the right, then I fill that cell with more soil and I pack it down really good. One mistake people make is they think that seed is so delicate and they don't want to hurt it. And so they don't want to pat that soil down. And all of a sudden, when that seedling tries to germinate, the root ends up pushing out and it just gets really confused. So you want to pack that soil down nice and tight. And that also allows the seed to actually absorb moisture from that soil. If you haven't packed that soil down around it, there'll be air gaps. And if there's air gaps, there's dryness. And so it won't absorb the water that it needs to in order to germinate. So that's seed starting. At this point, I would probably take that tray and soak it in a tub of water. Let it soak up water until the top of the soil looked wet. And then I place it in a series of trays. And I don't think those pictures are really easy to see. So that's why I have this guy sitting beside me. So here's the tray. Here's the seed tray.
Looks good there.
And
Looks good there.
then I've got it in another tray that actually holds water. And this actually has about an inch of water in it. So this holds water, and this keeps your tables and your floors and whatever you have your trays on. It keeps water from leaking out into your home. And then underneath all that, I use one of these mesh racks, and that gives the whole thing strength. So I see a lot of people that use these flimsy trays and they don't have anything underneath them to give it support. And they pick that up and the whole thing will fall. So
Can I ask you a question? How often, how long can you leave that cover on top when you're seeing?
I was just getting to that.
Oh, sorry about that.
I'm going to take you on tour with me.
So I-
Okay, so then I use a humidity dome. So there's a lot of I've been doing this for a long time, and I have a lot of success with that. And there are a lot of people that don't use humidity domes. And Joey's question is the perfect question to ask about that. The humidity dome, what I don't want to do is have to water that seedling tray again until the seeds have germinated. Because I don't want to disrupt those seeds and make them, like we talked about earlier with watering. And so this humidity dome helps hold that moisture in, it captures it. But once those seedlings start to germinate, that's when you take that top off. And I usually plant seeds that have similar germination times in a tray. And once I see about 50% of that tray germinated, the top comes off. Because if you leave it on for too long, then you will hold in too much mold and mildew, and you'll get fungus growing on the soil, and it can be a real mess. So that, and then I get them under lights as soon as they germinate. So.
Oh, they're that big? I didn't know they were that big, correct?
Yeah, they can be pretty big. So those seedlings, once they come up, they're actually pretty tall. But you can see the moisture that the dome is holding in. I don't really know why I'm holding a plastic knife in this picture.
Well, I wouldn't know the difference, but
I think I was going to make a point about something, but yeah. So here you can see, as soon as you start to see them germinate, that's when you want to take that top right off. These are some of my onions. All right, so some other supplies that you want to consider. Heat mats are good, especially for your heat-loving crops. Things like spinach and onions don't really love to be on heat mats. If you want to give them a little, if your house is really cold and you want to give them a little bit of a boost of soil warmth, then you can use a heat mat. But as soon as they start to germinate, you want to get them off of that heat mat because they really don't like the heat that much. Things like peppers and onions and eggplants and squash, things like that. Yes, they like some heat. And this heat mat is actually one I use for my kombucha and my sourdough starters, but it is designed to actually go in a windowsill. So you can use it for that as well. Heat mats come in all shapes and sizes. And so you can, if you're just going to start one little, 1 foot by 1 foot size tray, there's a heat mat that will fit under that.
I don't understand. I thought as long as it was 50 degrees outside during, I never did. I always waited to 50 degrees outside during the night. Then I used to put them outside. So how hot does it have to be actually? How hot do you put that?
It depends on the crop. It depends on the crop. So if you're starting seeds outdoors and you really want to pay attention to the soil temperature, not the air temperature. So if you're starting seeds outdoors, only things like your peas and your spinach and your Swiss chard. Those are the only things that are going to germinate in cold soil, and cold soil is soil under 60 degrees. So for your other seeds to germinate, it needs to be above 60 degrees. And if you look on like Johnny's Selected Seeds website, they have the optimum germination temperature for every type of seed that they sell. And that will tell you. So if you're trying to start seeds indoors for something like a tomato or a pepper, they really like soil that's in the, high 60s, 70s.
Oh,
And these heat mats are, the way these heat mats work is they heat up to about 10 degrees above the temperature around them. So it's not like they heat up to 100 degrees. If it's 50 in your house, those heat mats will heat up to about 60.
oh,
So, and then the other thing that I really like to use is a timer. So for the heat mats, that's something that's on 24 hours a day. But once those seeds have germinated and you need to get them under lights, you want those lights to turn on and off. You don't want to be shining light on those seedlings 24 hours a day. They need to rest. They need their nighttime dormancy, and then they need to grow during the day. This power outlet, I just discovered this year, and it's amazing. The outlet itself, the power strip, is a timer. And the 4 plugs on the left are controlled by the timer, and the plugs on the right are actually always on, which is really cool. So, okay, well, here's just some gratuitous pictures of
Hey, Hannah?
beautiful seed starting. Yeah.
Sorry. Where did you get that power strip from?
Oh, thank you. Good question. I got that on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
I can post a link to that, or, I'll send any resources people need on this stuff. So the other thing that your seedlings need is light, and they need a lot of it. They do not need fancy light. They do not need expensive light. They just need light, and they need as much of it as you can give them. So I use these shop lights, and you can get these from Ocean State Job Lot or Home Depot or anywhere. And you can get them on Amazon. These shop lights, they're 4-foot shop lights. They are $15. I get the brightest fluorescent bulb that I can possibly find. Usually a 2-pack of fluorescent bulbs, they'll say, like, I think the brightest one is 6,500 lumens, or it'll say like 6,500 K on it. Those are the brightest ones. They don't need to be LED. It's actually kind of nice. The fluorescent ones will give a little bit of heat to your seedlings. LEDs throw very little heat, although LEDs are more energy efficient, so that's up to you. But as long as they're getting nice, bright light. And the secret is getting that light within an inch of the tops of the seedlings.
Hannah, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Now, if you want to try to grow something all year round, hopefully get it to past the seedling stage, fluorescent lights would not work, correct? Would you need grow lights then? Nope. I think you're frozen, Hannah.
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Oh, now I can, yes.
Back? Okay, sorry. Yeah, it says my internet connection is unstable. Wonderful. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Did you hear my question?
Yes. You don't really need grow lights. White light has red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Plants use red and blue light to grow. So if you have really, really bright white light, it has lots of red and lots of blue in it already. So, I mean, you can supplement with grow lights, and with the indoor growing craze that's going on now, there's all sorts of iterations of those, but they're really expensive, and I've never found a reason for them.
How long do you leave those lights on?
Yeah, it's a great question. I usually put them on a 12-hour light dark cycle.
Or you put a timer on it?
I do. Yeah, that's why I was so excited about see this outlet on the left here at the top of it. That's a timer. So I have my lights plugged into that, and it turns them on and off for me. And,
Okay.
you know, that's 12 hours is about maximum.
Because I know one thing, that the sun, the plants absorb the heat, the light during the day, and it grows during the night.
Right. That's why they need that dark period at night. You've got to let them rest outside of the sunlight, or else they'll try to absorb more light instead of growing. So you want them to grow. So you want that light down as low as possible. And as the seedlings grow, you want to be able to adjust the height of the light so that the seedlings can keep growing. You don't want the light to actually touch the seedlings, or even a cool light will damage the plants.
That is a beautiful picture. That there. I
Yeah,
like that.
that's my dining room.
Wow.
And I have tables on either side of the room that also have the same setup.
Jay,
So,
that
yeah.
is fantastic job.
yeah,
Beautiful.
thank you. So that's
I know-
my crazy.
I know a lady that wants something like that. I can't remember her name, but there's a lady that likes things like that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who like this. So, okay, so one other thing I want to talk about seedling care, and then I'll probably go ahead and open it up for a little bit of a discussion. I mean, I could keep talking all night, but
All right by me. Keep going. You sound terrific to me. I'm learning every time you open your mouth. Keep going.
Thank you. So, do you remember that first picture I showed you where I said, pay attention to this tray and notice there's one seedling per cell?
Yeah, it was a little tiny. Okay.
Yep. So that was a bigger tray. That tray had bigger cells than this one. This is actually a 200 cell tray. And these are chicories that I planted, and I actually planted these as an example. So this is a very poor way to grow seedlings. It looks great, but they are way too crowded. And what this will do is it will force these seedlings to try to grow taller than their neighbors so that they can get the sunlight. They're shading each other out. And each one of these has a very weak stem because they're putting, as they absorb that sunlight and photosynthesize, they're putting all of that energy into growing tall. And they're trying to grow tall as fast as possible. So they're not growing tall with a lot of quality. If a plant didn't have to compete and grow really, really fast, it could take all of that photosynthesis, all of that energy that it's making, and it can put it into making a nice, strong body. And so you want to thin those trays. And so that goes back to planning again. So knowing the germination rate of your seeds, knowing how many of those seeds you need to plant to give you the amount of seeds that you want will alleviate you from putting 1 million seeds in each cell and then having to either thin them and compost them or eat them. I ate these, but you can't grow these seedlings in this tray like this and expect them, once you transplant them out into your garden, they will not do anywhere near as well as the ones that were thinned and grown properly. And the other thing you might note, if you look on this picture in this very corner cell, if you see this long stem leading up to the leaves, so from the soil surface, there's that white thread-like stem, and then you see some leaves on top.
Mhm.
When you transplant these into their next size cell, you bury that whole stem right up to the base of those leaves. And that helps make a really nice, strong seedling.
Now, on the side where you had that thing was turning like a right there on the reddish color, reddish green color.
Those are all different seedlings. So I cheated
Oh,
with
I
this
see.
picture.
Sorry about
I cheated a little bit with this picture. This is my, yeah, these are all my chicories. This
Oh,
is actually a mixed green seed packet. There's red mustard and escarole and red lettuce. And these are little baby kohlrabi. You can tell by that funny little leaf edge there. So yeah, I
I'll be
cheated.
right back. Oh,
So this is just another example of that. So, Kay, how are we doing on time? I mean, I know we're like way over.
What time is it?
It's 8:20.
It's 8:20, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like that is probably a good place to stop, and at least open it up for questions.
Okay, that sounds good, Hannah.
Does anybody have any questions?
Fred had to leave early and he said to let you know that there's a lot of great information. And he said, thank you.
Okay, great.
So I had a question.
Yes.
I know you told me to ask it. I had to remember.
Oh, good. You remembered.
It's because I made an email, a draft email, and I have it up in my email. So it's right there in front of me in all
Perfect.
caps. Ask Anna. I wanted to ask about my artichokes because you said that I will have to vernalize. I don't know if I said it right. My pronunciation is awful.
Yeah.
The plant. And I also had done some more reading after you said that, and it said that I should have done it to the seed too. So there's two questions in that one.
Yeah, the seed is fine. It's already germinated, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's fine. And generally seed companies are, if they're not going to do the work for you on preparing that seed to germinate, they'll tell you. So vernalization is something that some seeds do need, and a lot of companies will take care of that before they sell it to you. And if they don't, they will send you an instruction sheet. So
Can you explain to us what vernalization means?
yes. So vernalization is something that's going on out in nature right now, right? So vernal means spring, and vernalization is the process through which plants and animals and seeds and all sorts of things go through in order to come out of winter and dormancy and be prepared to grow. So all of our native plants in New England go through this process. When the seeds are formed in the fall and drop to the ground, they don't germinate. And that's a mechanism to prevent those seeds from germinating right before winter starts and them dying. And so
did you answer my question? I'm sorry, I interrupted. I'm sorry.
that's okay. So those seeds require going through a freezing period, which is winter. And then at this time of year, they go through freeze, thaw, wet, dry, freeze, thaw, wet, freeze, thaw, wet, dry, right? That's New England spring. And that's spring in most temperate climates. And that process of having frozen first for X amount of weeks, frozen solid, stayed frozen for the winter, and then this time of year got warm, and now it's going to get cold again. And it's going to get warm, it's going to get cold, it's going to rain, and then it'll freeze, and then it'll get warm again, right? So that process works on that seed. Remember I said in that seed coat, there are some chemicals, that some seeds actually have chemicals in their seed coat that are controlling dormancy. Those spring rains actually begin to leach those chemicals out of that seed coat. And that freeze, thaw, rain, dry, just works that seed coat. And then all of a sudden they germinate. So you look out and you'll see the acorns germinating. You'll see your Rudbeckias, their black-eyed Susans germinating, the lupins germinate. So that's what vernalization is for seeds. And what vernalization is for plants. So Kay is growing artichokes and she started seeds. Artichokes are a plant from native to slightly warmer climate than we have here, more like what you'd imagine in Italy or, Greece, places where they do get cold, maybe like Northern California. Artichokes grow really well in Northern California. And in those climates, these plants are actually biennials. So they start growth in the first year, and then the plant itself has to go through a winter dormancy in order to initiate puberty, essentially. So artichoke is a plant that we grow to eat the flower bud. That's the choke. And in order to get that plant to produce a flower in just one growing season, we need to trick it into thinking it has gone through winter. So what Kay is going to need to do is, once those seedlings grow and got probably 3 or 4 true leaves, so they come out, they have their little cotyledons, and then they have one nice true leaf, and then they'll put out another true leaf, and then they'll put another true leaf this way, and then they'll put another true leaf this way. So once they've finally formed that nice 4th big true leaf, and you see another like 5th true leaf starting to come out, you need to get them outdoors where they're going to be cold and they're going to think that winter is coming, and they're going to take a hit. They're going to have a little bit of damage to the tips of their leaves. You're going to be like, oh my God, what am I doing? Don't put them out when it's going to be 18 degrees. You don't need to leave them out overnight at first, but you almost want to go through that hardening off process, and you kind of want to take advantage. Artichokes are something that we start super early, and I think you did start them early enough. When did you start them?
They just germinated a few days ago.
Okay, so you probably started them like late February?
I think I did. I
Yeah.
don't have any of my stuff with me to look, but yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So at this point, get some nice bright lights on them, get those lights down nice and close, give them a little bit of a fertilizer boost. You really want them to grow kind of fast right now because you want them to size up enough while it's still cold enough outside to vernalize them. So you want to be able to get them to a size where then you can move them outside as if you were hardening them off. You don't want to just totally shock them from inside your house and just throw them outside in a freezing cold Maine day. But, you know, think about that fertilization, and then you'll kind of put them through that cold weather for a good couple, 2 or 3 weeks. And then you might want to give them a chance to sort of warm up again, and, you know, spend, you know, another week or so inside and then plant them out. So that is the process of vernalization for plants.
I like to know one thing. When you go out and you, okay, you think, for instance, like I got a whole bunch of leaves out here. I usually grind them up and put them back into the ground.
Yeah.
A lot of people think I'm crazy, but to me,
Oh God.
it makes the grass a heck of a lot greener and more, I don't know, beautiful. The grass
Oh,
is more
yeah.
green.
I scavenge leaves from people who don't want them. Yeah, no, leaves are amazing mulch for sure.
Yeah, like I said, every year I used to. There's a lady that takes care of it now, but I used to go around and cut my leaves when they come off the tree, and just grind them into the ground and let them rot during the winter.
Nice. Excellent.
So Hannah, do you think that I could use manure as a fertilizer with the artichokes? I mean, not now, but when they get that 5th leaf, or do you think it's too soon, or?
I think between now and sizing up is you want to feed them now, because you want to. And I only say that because what you really want to try to do right now is force them to grow pretty quickly.
Okay.
So the plants need to be a certain size in order to vernalize and be stimulated to bloom. So if the plant is too young and you vernalize it, it won't matter. It won't do anything to it. So it needs to be that certain, like,
Correct.
age, right? And plants age by how big they get, you
Right.
know. So you want to sort of force that to grow really quickly right now. And that's why I would give it a good boost of food, and, you know, give it a lot of light, and, you know, see if you can just get nice big plants. And in the next, because you're going to want to really try that vernalization by the end of this month. You want to try to be able to get those plants outdoors where they can receive that cold treatment. I have actually also vernalized plants by putting them in my refrigerator.
That's a good idea. Thank you, Hannah.
That's a little, I mean, it's better for them to be outside where they get sunlight and cold, and not just like the cold treatment. But anyway, so.
Thank you.
Should we wrap
So
up?
I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I really appreciate a lot of really good questions that have, you know, helped me make the points that I should be making. And
It's the other way around. We should be thanking you for your knowledge. No, the other way around. You got things backwards. First time I can say to a lady, you got things backwards.
Well, thank you.
If I had half this smart that you had, I'd be very happy concerning plants.
I can only imagine. I think you have probably had some pretty amazing gardens from the sound of it. So
Well, thank you very much, Hannah. I really appreciate it.
yeah, you are welcome. This was fun, and congratulations on the new page and all the crazy plant addict stuff. This is a really fun group.
I wanted to bring awareness. I know with the COVID that a lot of people are starting to plant, and I think a lot of people aren't sure of what to do. So we wanted to bring awareness, bring people together with all different levels that we can help each other learn. So
Yeah.
thank you for participating.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I love it.
Well,
So-
lady, I was really surprised. I didn't know you had that much knowledge. No offense now, no offense. I didn't know you had all the knowledge you did. You,
I hide it well.
oh, great. Lady, after you got me going, I wouldn't have left this computer for nothing.
Aw, good. That's good to hear.
Anytime,
Thank-
anytime you want to talk, just tell me ahead of time. I'll be here before you can blink.
Well, I think I'm giving another presentation in I don't know, we haven't talked about when, but
Well, we've already gotten comments that they would like to have you back.
oh, good.
Yes.
Good, good. Yeah. So,
We'll be back.
anyway, yeah, it's just the beginning.
Yes.
Can I ask
Should
you,
we- you
can I ask
guys-
you, next time you do this, could you make a point of talking about flowers, some of it?
Versus vegetables, or what do you mean?
Okay, you're talking about basically vegetables, what you're doing now.
Yes.
Okay, the way I understand it, flowers are a heck of a lot different and more sensitive. I could be wrong, I do not know.
It depends on the flowers, so yeah. You know what you should do? You can write to Kay or send a message through the Facebook group about the questions that you have on that, and we'll see next time what we can talk about.
I don't have to write to Kay. All I gotta do is blink and she's there.
Oh,
I can see a house from there.
Okay. Is this saved?
Okay, well, thanks, Hannah, very much. We
Yeah.
did record this, and hopefully the recording,
We're gonna post it.
Um,
Hopefully we can post the link.
right, we're
On
hoping
to our-
it came out well. This is our first
Yeah.
hosted meeting, so we've never recorded before, so hopefully it has, and we will save it for people who are unable to attend.
awesome. And I just made you guys the hosts again, and thank you for having me, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And
You too.
see you next
Thanks for
time.
all the, I didn't know it. I just can say thank you. That's all.
Thank you,
Okay,
Hannah,
thank
so
you.
much. And thank you, everybody.
Everybody,
You're-
have a good night.
Have a good
You're very
weekend.
welcome.
Bye.
Bye,
Signing
everybody.
off.
We're signing off. Thank you.
Night.
Bye.
Yeah.
And